Good evening and welcome to the August 25th, 2021 work session of the Penfield Town Board. I'll ask those of us in the auditorium to please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll ask our clerk to please call the roll.
Draw.
Here.
Cole.
Here.
LaFountain.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
Ockenden.
Here.
All present.
All right, thank you. First order of business is the minutes from our last meeting, August 11th. Would entertain a motion of approval for those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Councilperson Ockenden, second by Councilperson Draw. I'll ask, is there any discussion, comments, input on those minutes? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
All right, monthly reports are all up to date, so the next session or the next time we'll talk about them will be at our next work session on September 8th. We have no public hearings this evening. We do not have any guests. We do have a number of action items. So we're going to start with our first action item, a request for a second curb cut at 107 Panorama Trail. Mr. Tate is teed up for that. He had Mr. Valentine give us an update on the 11th, and I think Mr. Tate's here to kind of report out as to next steps.
Yep, thank you. So Mark Valentine at the last work session did take care of this for me. I had the applicant in. The request was to more or less for a temporary curb cut for a small landscaping trailer to be placed kind of along his side property line along Farm Brook. With that said, trying to figure out how to memorialize that, being that it is temporary, it's not intended to be paved or anything permanent. I have had conversations with Patrick and have determined that I guess at least in my mind, the easiest way to do that would be as a standard right-of-way application, no different than we do for any other driveways and curb cuts. However, we'll make a note on here that it's temporary with a sunset date on here listed as basically December 31st of 2026. Gives him just over 5 years with the idea that if he needs a longer time frame than that, I believe that was the time frame that he indicated or anticipated needing that area for. If it needs it longer, we can certainly come back and grant an extension for that. If and when he's done with that sooner, I've also asked him to reach out, let me know, so that I can close that out, so that if he decides to move away, a future homeowner does not take that and believe that that's permanent. He was agreeable to that, and that's at least our proposed plan forward.
All right. We'll let the record show that Mr. Horwitz did have an opportunity to review that and was supportive of that approach as well. So I'll ask the board any questions, follow up to 2 weeks ago. We had the applicant in on Zoom, but based on what we hear from Mr. Tate, any questions from Mr. Tate or concerns, comments, or otherwise?
One question, Mr. Supervisor. Sure. Mr. Tate, I know since then we've heard nothing from the neighbors. There's no issues with the neighbors having any question or concern of that trailer being on that property?
Not that I'm aware of. I've not heard anything from anyone other than the applicant.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything additional that should be added to the record that isn't currently in the record, Mr. Tate?
Not at this time.
Okay. With that, would entertain a motion of approval to move forward with a temporary right-of-way permit.
Mr. Supervisor, I'll move that we grant the temporary right-of-way permit as described by Mr. Tate in detail.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Councilperson Draw, second by Councilperson Cole. I'll ask one last opportunity for any questions, comments, or input. Seeing none, roll call vote, please, Sue.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
All right. We will next move on to item B. Matt Lester, Burger King architectural changes. Mr. Costello, I see Mr. Lester and team coming up front here. And Mr. Costello, I'll ask if there is any additional comments that you'd like to make before we turn the mic over.
No, not yet. No,
All right,
nothing new.
great. And we'll let the record show that even though you hear the thunder and lightning, we've got complete coverage with our backup generator. Mr. Renner tends to get a little nervous about lightning and all kinds of electronics, so I'm guessing we'll see him in and out. With that, Matt, welcome. And you can take your mask down if you're comfortable with doing that. So have at it.
Great. Thank you, everyone. It's good to see you. Last time I think we did this, it was Zoom. So
It was.
everyone
Nice to
looks
see you.
great in person as well.
Thank you.
I have with me from APD, Alexandria. We're here to discuss the opportunity to revisit our approval for the Burger King that was approved at, what was the address, 16?
Hard question.
Yeah, we phrased the minor details like the address.
2146 Fairport
2146,
Road.
thank you.
Yep.
So this came out of necessity, and I apologize that we're here before you. We wanted to be on site working by now. We had the general contractor for the operator there doing some preliminary clearing and grubbing, and we're anxious to get going. But due to some supply chain issues that have been going on, I'm not sure if you're hearing this throughout, across the board, but Burger King tried to introduce a new prototype, which we were very proud of and excited about, and we spent a lot of time getting that approved on the first go-round, which we appreciate. So given the supply chain issues that we're facing now, corporate and the operator are facing some challenges on timing. We're looking at, and this is coming from the operator, materials being 20 to 25 weeks out from the date of ordering, which we are now with the building permit underway thinking about ordering. This puts us in winter conditions, potentially a blackout. We are significantly behind the eight ball if we move forward with the approval that we have and the prototype that was approved. So we wanted to revisit that and shift to a different building, design that I think Alexandria
Presented a month ago, and there was two board members. How much do you want me to go back and speak to the new design? How much have you gotten to see? I know there's a few examples in the communities.
So let's, in the interest of time, but also because it is a significant change, I think it's important to recap so that there's a full understanding overall. I was one of the board members that was not in attendance. I'll be very candid. I was a little bit disappointed and still am. So I need to be convinced why we should make the change.
Sure.
So with that, the task is yours, Alexandra, to help
Don't
us
set the
with
bar
that.
high.
All right.
No, the bar is very high.
Okay, convincing. So I do want to point out the renderings you're seeing are higher in building elevation than we were proposing for your town. We've already taken into consideration that the corporate design is tall and big, and to make modifications that are more with the community, we've lowered the building. Ms. Draw
Yes.
asked for comparisons in the other surrounding communities. Farmington is similar in height. That one was lowered. Geneseo Burger King is much higher.
Higher, right.
Much higher. So I couldn't get a tape measure.
That's okay.
My 25-foot tape measure topped out, but it's definitely higher than your 21-foot building. So I know those were specific things I wanted to mention today.
Thank you.
The glazing for occupant level is very similar. The entrances are the same. The footprint is generally the same, minus vestibules. The major changes is the upper portions of the building and the way that the pavilion, which is the original design, treats sort of the clear story and the shading of their glazing dining rooms. The Rock 60, I didn't get a good answer on why it's called the Rock.
That's okay.
It was designed in the early 2000s. and then rethought in 2012 to be comfortable and appealing to families and teenagers with modern elements and interior pops of color. So that was coming from why they chose the different building elements. It is a modern take on food efficiency, experience efficiency, and general site efficiency to getting both vehicles and pedestrians in and out. So those were the driving forces of the proposed Rock 60.
In the pavilion was the proposed and approved building, and really what that was intended to do, and this is what RBI tried to implement across the board, and that's our preference too. Again, we're here out of necessity. With all candor, we would have loved to have seen the building that we have approved built. There's the supply chains, the delays on materials, and just the timing is putting us in a really tough position given their entry to this market where they have urgency and there's some requirements internally with RBI, with this operator. So if we're 20 to 30 weeks out, we're in winter conditions, he misses some critical dates on his opening rollout, it puts the deal in jeopardy to a degree. He'd have to, do some dancing, and we'd have to try to work the politics of franchises. I don't want to get into that. It would be very nice if we could advance the deal quickly to get the structure vertical before the winter conditions, which we hope to be in a position to do. The nuances of the look, if you just take the two elevations side by side, between the pavilion, which was approved, and the Rock 60, which we're now proposing, there's transom storefront glass between the sign band and the storefront glass. What we're proposing has more, wall. It's less glass, not as transparent. I don't want this to feel like we're doing a bait and switch. I don't like that. That's not how I've made.
I will tell you that's where I was.
Yeah, and
I did mention that to the board and staff, that's the first thing that it felt like was a bait and switch.
It's the last thing. I've been in front of the board with other projects. I'm not changing careers tomorrow. It's the last thing I want to be, develop a reputation for. As some of the folks here know, this is a very uncomfortable position to be in. It's hard enough to get an approval, let alone come back and ask for a change. So this is really spearheaded by the operator and the necessity given the supply chain and the material delays. We're seeing that across the board. We had some starts and stops on other projects in the town. We had to change truss packages on a Chipotle deal over at Bay and Empire. It was a supply chain issue too. We had to change the whole thing around so we could get it faster. We went from steel to wood, and the wood got delayed 16 weeks. It's happening with our projects all over the board. It's not fun. It's not a cost thing as much as, there's some nuances and increases. It is what it is. We're willing to bear that. It's just a timeline issue. So respectfully, whatever you feel is appropriate, we're going to move forward with, but there's going to be a significant impact from a deal risk standpoint to try to reel in the supplies and materials with the pavilion design. So.
Okay. Board questions?
Mr. Supervisor, just real quick, I kind of was talking about this when you were in front of us about a month ago, and Mr. Lester, I agree with you 100%. I mean, my mind hasn't changed one bit. I think the originally proposed pavilion is far better than what is being proposed right now. I mean, from an aesthetic perspective, both on the front with the windows and the side with a little, variation of elements versus the new proposal that looks just very bland, very sterile, very cookie cutter. I'm not an expert in building these kind of things, but it just looks like a cheaper kind of put together, standard store kind of thing. And I kind of go back to what I said before, and that is, if we're going to do something, then we might as well do it right and put something in there that's going to be an enhancement to the community, not only from providing, a service to the community, that a restaurant provides, but also providing an aesthetic to the community versus just throwing something in there because somebody wants to get it up and running and operational as quick as possible. And I understand that. I can appreciate someone's perspective in trying to get, the revenue generating as quick as they can. But from a town board perspective and being a town board member, I'm not willing to sacrifice that in order just to get something put in there and get it up and running. And so my position has not changed from supporting, endorsing, and voting for the old pavilion model versus not supporting the changes that corporate appeared to be kind of forcing you to do, which I think is the reason why you're here today.
Yeah, I mean, it's really comes down to there's extenuating issues that are beyond my control. Granted, this will be my asset at the end of the day, so I want to see the nicest building built as well.
Well,
but if it turns into there may not ever be a building built, I would rather go with, personally, we want to get something built, and we want to get what can get done and will get done because we know we have access to the materials and the opportunity to construct. I'm trying to think of maybe some alternatives.
Do you have the elevations also that in front of you guys that were sent in? Because the rendering is scary in how tall it is. It's a great weird angle that architect chose to take that rendering at, and it is intimidating. And I ask you to look past that and look at the elevations for your specific building, for the one that will be built. It is not as high. It is not as much wall. The guest experience once inside will be very similar for the two in the volume of light that'll come in the clear story that is below structure will feel very similar.
Okay.
So the experience internally will be similar. There won't, I don't want to say the same because they're not, but you'll have the same volume of connection to the exterior and the interior for the patron. What you're seeing in the pavilion is a lot of structure and clear story that you would experience from the outside, but again, it would be all dark and you wouldn't be seeing into the structure, the steel, the wood members. You'd be seeing into shadows. So from the outside, you do get more glass with the pavilion, but it's not like a large atrium you would see if you had a downtown skyscraper and you'd be able to see in and out.
And unfortunately, these elevations don't really do the proposed building justice. If you have had an opportunity to see it in person, it's actually a very nice looking building. And prior to, I think, proposing the pavilion, there wasn't a pavilion. I mean, this is, if it wasn't available as far as their design book was concerned, we would have only proposed the Rock 60, which I know comparatively it's pale. I agree with you, Al. I much prefer the pavilion.
I mean, I think that the Rock 60 just does not have much curb appeal to it. Whereas I would argue that the old pavilion has a nicer curb appeal to it. It's got a much better aesthetic. And again, I go back to the statement: if we're going to do it, we should do it right. And while I have an understanding and I respect the corporate's desire to get something up there, to get it up and running, start providing the service, start generating revenue, I can appreciate that. From the town board perspective, as a town board member, right now, I'm not prepared to sacrifice that in order just to get something up there and get it running because of supply chain issues. And you're right. I mean, supply chain issues are everywhere in all different kinds of construction, outside and inside. But I'm not convinced that what's being proposed is better than what we originally voted for and supported.
Yeah, it's a stylistic difference for sure. The other thing we took a step back to look at is just the design of the neighborhood, the adjacent buildings. So we have the new Metro Mattress building with Moe's. We looked at that design element, the criteria, the building materials, the glass, the height, et cetera. And then we looked at the Panera, the two adjacent buildings. Car wash we'll leave out for now. But we felt as though this wouldn't detour from the design elements of the neighborhood. It's consistent, as a matter of fact. It's probably more consistent with the Rock 60 with the adjacent buildings than the Pavilion. We want to show off the Burger King building. That's why we proposed the Pavilion. That's why we're proud of it getting approved. We just can't do it. And I appreciate all of the delays, and I'm not one to, I'd rather measure twice, cut once, wait a little bit longer for the right thing. We didn't feel as though this would be detrimental to the aesthetic of the neighborhood. We felt this actually would fit in fairly well, and we were hopeful that it would be received well. We added the emissions control system for the broiler. We wanted to make sure that the function of the facility worked for the neighborhood and the neighbors. So there was very significant additional expense. We wanted to make sure we did that. We know there's kids and neighbors in the adjacent.
You would have done that either.
We would have had
either
to.
one.
You would have forced me to.
Right now, you're going to do that.
It's not anything I'm giving you.
So,
That's just
yeah.
something to pay.
Don't try to peddle me, a bottle of Dr. Good. So I hear
Yeah.
you. I appreciate it, but you would have done that either way.
So one of the
I'm not sure the neighbors have that, but we will have that.
Yeah, one of the comments that I made a month ago was taking the Rock 60 and maybe providing some level of, I use the word edits, it's not the right construction term, but some type of improvement to it than what we're looking at right
Sure.
now. I mean, I believe, and correct
Dress
me
it
if
up.
I'm wrong, what we're looking at right now is exactly the same thing we saw a month ago
Which one? You're talking about
Rock
the new
for
proposed
Rock
Rock.
60.
The elevations are, yes.
I'll defer to Alexandria
Yeah,
about
and
what we can
Alexandria,
add.
I'm okay, the elevations, I trust that the elevations are going to be what they need to be. And maybe this rendering
Yeah.
accentuates it a little bit more than what it needs to, and I trust that that's going to be taken care of. But I'm not seeing any aesthetic improvement in the Rock 60 to convince this board, as the supervisor said, to adjust our vote from what we support in the past to what we can support in the future. And again, not to keep going back, but I would have preferred to have you come forward with some level of improvement to what we saw a month ago compared to looking at the same rendering per se. And I'll even leave it out there again that if this board decides not to move forward with it, that if you come back with some better aesthetic than what we're looking at right now, I'm as one town board member willing to. I'll take a look at that.
Could we add a sign
consider
ban
that.
from on the?
And I can definitely, if a working session, I can talk about what design modifications can be made. But correct me if I'm wrong, I'm understanding you want to try to merge the two together,
Well,
then
yeah, I mean, I'm not an architect, I'm not an engineer. I like to see things visually.
Improve the appearance of the Rock
Correct.
60.
I mean, again, the first one was great. Totally support it, 100%. You guys, I wish you were starting to build that right now. The second version, the one we saw a month ago, not so much. For the reasons I stated before. And not to keep going on, but as far as I'm concerned, as one town board member, I don't support moving forward with the Rock 60 version compared to what we originally proposed. If you want to take a look at modifications and come back, I would be open to taking a look at that with some level of improved aesthetic. But as of right now, my vote, Mr. Supervisor, if we're looking at a yay or nay, is not going to be to support the Rock 60 as proposed. Thank you.
So could you explain the product What is so different in Rock 60 than in Pavilion that is warranting the 25-plus week?
Yeah, this,
It's the silver cantilevered band and the lighting elements that are in that band. So it's sort of the silver hat that's on Pavilion and the way that's wrapped and the materials that are encasing that. The steel that holds that tower and the sign band tower that's out in front of the Pavilion, that is a huge element that can't be swapped into wood. It has to stay steel it's structural. The glazing, the storefront systems at the heights that they're at, they're outside of simple storefront shop and they're moving towards curtain wall. So that's adding a ton of engineering to get that. And so that drives production and engineering and costs and availability. So it's that the choices that were made.
That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with product flow, though, does it?
it's the steel.
Are you talking about the products that are used to put the building together?
Yeah.
To get a curtain wall versus getting a storefront system that is within standard building heights, those are very different products.
Okay. But you went into this original Pavilion version knowing that you were going to do that, or that you had to do that.
Yes,
We didn't have the lead time.
but we couldn't, when the design was started originally, there wasn't the lead time issues and there wasn't, we can't order anything until we have town approval, and we can't start the design production of products. So putting them on the table, like ordering the hoods of the kitchen equipment, we can't order it until you approve it.
So I think some of the systems are custom fabrication, and the lead times are just, I mean, it's just longer lead times. It could get done. It's not like they don't make them anymore. It's just an exorbitant lead time that impacts additional processes to get a store open. We tried to pivot to wood. We tried to pivot to, a different material for the aluminum wrap. We proposed like an Ichiha, anything that would be nicer looking. And we're still trying to come up with some kind of hybrid. To Mr. Moore's point, I'd love to have an opportunity to try to take another shot at doing a better sign band on the Rock 60. If we get into structural steel requirements, we're not going to be able to minimize that lead time. If we could keep it more aesthetic and mechanically fastened, we're in a good spot. So it's just tasking Alexandria with an architectural challenge.
Sure.
Is what it is. But it's going to be difficult to keep the Pavilion. What I've been told is it's not going to be able to be doable. So the task is to come up with a solution. That's all I'm here trying to do, just to get this thing on track, keep it on track. If it's a 20-week, 30-week delay, it's going to be up to them if they could stay on board.
Understand.
Yeah, it's not my decision.
Yep, no, I understand that. Okay. Board, other thoughts, other comments?
Mine only is what Andy said was right on target. I had thought that was a takeaway for you to go back and see if there's something to make it more attractive. That block area is what kind of really makes it so dissimilar to the Pavilion.
We have canopies over the glazing. I can raise the canopies so they're higher off the ground. So the elements that I have on the Rock 60, I can move them, push them, pull them. We have glazing on all of the walls I looked at. Can I add more windows? Every window in the dining room is there.
If the canopies went above the glazing,
Yeah, I can slide the canopies
Could you do
up.
those up?
frame it a little bit more like the Pavilion with that
but-
more modern feel.
Yeah, that's definitely a change that can happen. I didn't quite understand how you wanted me to change. It was more a blanket, give me another design. And I was like, I don't have more designs. I'm bringing you a new one.
So I think the goal is to improve upon the proposal. And if we have some flexibility and latitude with
I can add color.
improving the Rock 60, I think we could get there. If we have to go back to the structure and the the systems that are in the pavilion, we can't solve the delay on the materials there. Those are the two things that I'm being told, and I'm trying to be the intermediary here. So ultimately, I'm not building it. It's the operator's building to build. I want the nicest building on the property. I'm going to drive by it every day too. So this is sort of frustrating for me. At no fault of mine or yours. Just trying to figure out how to get this thing.
Yep, understand.
Looking good.
Understand.
So.
All right, so we're at a crossroads, and a couple, sorry?
No,
Yep. Councilperson Draw?
may I? Yeah, thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So just a couple points. I wanted to emphasize that I think we had in that old pavilion, I'm not sure some of it, I know I was one that wasn't thrilled with that, how big that sign, the post out there was anyways, that of the sign, of the Burger King sign on that.
On the lower left?
I
is it
never
on your
liked
left?
that part. I thought that was too tall anyways, but.
So that'll be reduced with.
Okay. My point, and then going into the new Rock 60. So I spent some time went in that Burger King in Geneseo, looked at it, like you said, and I also looked around it. You're right, it's very tall.
Yeah, it's not gonna
very
be the
tall.
same.
There's no grass around it. It's very dark, very institutionalized, I would say, building. Yet I did, not in your, in looking at what that is built there, also going across the street and looking at the McDonald's, the Wendy's, they are built very similar to this. So, I get that this is probably what the fast food are doing. They're all like very, very similar buildings, very similar, inside and outside. So I understand that, but I see the point that we would want, I still want us to have something that's nicer looking up there. But if we're willing to, as Mr. Moore said and the supervisor said, if we can do something to maybe set that Rock 60 ahead that makes it look sharper. Maybe it is raising the cantilevers or doing something with color more or trim or to downplay all the starkness of the building.
Yeah.
Because, and I agree with you, I also spent time up there today looking at all the buildings where it's going to go. You're not, to your defense, you're not totally out of, character of what some of those buildings look like. But yet, this is a building that we want the neighborhood and, going forward, we want it to be, something that, like you said, that we're proud of too to go by. And, but I see that looking around, this is the way that a lot of these buildings are going towards. So if we can make it set a little bit different, I think that it might be, I think we might be able to work with.
Well said, Debbie.
Yeah,
within our
appreciate that.
board.
And I'm disappointed we're at this point too, because I was excited on the the approval that we had. This is kind of bittersweet. We want to get it done. So we'll if you feel that we can improve upon this, that's what we'll do.
We'll get everybody
to
the table.
With the first look. Yeah, I appreciate that. Appreciate you taking the time to go out and look at the buildings in Geneseo.
Okay. Other comments?
Yeah, I'll just comment. I wasn't here at the last session, much like the supervisor, so I had a chance to kind of, review this, but kind of seeing it up close for the first time, and unfortunately didn't have a chance to go to any of the locations. But Matt, your comment about, it does fit the neighborhood for sure, but I got to be honest with you, that's why I like the other building, because it didn't fit the neighborhood. Sometimes you see too many bricks, and it's just kind of like they all blend together, and this one kind of gave it, just in modern might be the word or something. So I'd be inclined to want to see something that's
May I ask
makes
a
it
couple
stand out a little
questions,
bit.
just to get your reaction?
I agree with you.
I know you guys were concerned about signage. Is more signage on or off the table?
Off the table.
Okay. Color, changing from some of the silver accents to black, to bronze, to red, to the bun color, which is like yellow-orange, depending on who you talk to.
I think what I'm hearing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that the look of the pavilion, a little bit more modern, a little bit more unique, was something that felt good to the board. And if we could somehow improve on the materials of the Rock 60, maybe raise the canopies above the storefront glass to break up the, I don't know what material that is. Is it ephes? Is it, I don't know what that is on the sign band between the two towers? Tower elements?
Reduce that.
No, I just don't know. So break that up, so it
Yeah.
looks like the rock compared to that has more transom windows, there's more transparency and different materials. It's not, and I don't know if you're seeing the same thing that I'm looking
We are.
at.
We are.
Okay.
What about
The magic of technology.
windows that are fake? How do you guys feel about that?
Like
So-
spandrel or?
So if during the kitchens areas and the restroom areas take up a lot of exterior wall space, I don't want windows looking into the bathrooms, but I can put on the exterior wall a blacked out window that would match. So from the outside, it would look like there's more window bays, but not all of them would be real. How do you guys feel about that? Some people don't like it, and some people are like, oh yeah, it gives me more windows on the outside.
So I'll speak for myself. Certainly, the easy answer is yes, to take a look at that, Alexander. And the color as well. I'm not opposed to taking a look at that. I think I'll summarize it to say that it needs to look better than a box. And right now, it looks like a box.
Okay.
If you do some materials that look like windows, so that you dress that up a little bit. If there's some colors that you feel, make it either pop or make it a little bit better from a curb appeal standpoint, raising the awning above the window. I mean, all of those types of things, I think, as you take a look at it. I think Mr. Moore summarized that right now, what we looked at, unfortunately, and what you brought in, not you personally, but what was brought in with the pavilion, that's the piece that I think this board liked. They liked the looks of it. They liked how it fit into the area and what have you. Now that you look at the Rock 60, I'm sure a very functional building for Burger King, but it's a blah building from what I'm looking at with that versus the pavilion. So a dressed up Rock or a modified pavilion, something along those lines is where I think we need to be.
Okay.
Speaking for myself, there are 4 votes on the board, but speaking for myself, that's where we need to be.
Yeah, that seems like a consistent theme, so appreciate it.
So the next question is that, can you do that in the next 2 weeks?
I
Yeah.
don't think I have a choice.
All right,
You don't have a choice.
so.
We know
we've,
you can.
Yeah, I'll do it if she can. We're going to make this work.
Nope, we're
Okay,
getting.
so we will put you on the agenda for this meeting tonight. We'll take no action, and we'll put you on the agenda for September 8th.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
And we'll put you
Back to
at
school.
the top of the list.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor. Thank
All
you,
right.
board. As always, appreciate the consideration.
All right, great.
s-
Thank you.
we'll
Be
send
well.
you-
Be well. Be safe. Any other questions before you leave?
Nope, I'll just send you documents as soon as I have them.
Thank
Or
you.
As soon as they're approved.
And stay in contact with Mr. Costello. And if there are any questions that come up, Mr. Costello can route those through the board. So if you're putting something together and you're looking for some input feedback,
that's
please contact Jim, and he'll make sure that he gets that circulated.
That's phenomenal. Appreciate that opportunity.
All right, great. Thank you again.
Have a good night.
All right, have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
evening. Okay, Board, we'll move on to item C. Ryan Morris, this is a request for consideration of rezoning at 1506 Empire Boulevard, and I'll ask Mr. Costello if he would tee that up a little further.
Thanks so much.
All right.
I'd be happy to. This is another one of the requests coming in. We've got about 4 now total. I think you have 1 tabled before the board. We just had one at 125 Panorama Trail. And this is the 3rd one coming in now. And this is a result of the applicants coming in back in late 2018, early 2019, having meetings with the Comprehensive Plan Update Committee. The Comprehensive Plan Update Committee has made recommendations, and we're going to be getting you a list of recommendations beyond this, but they may not be necessary to deal with until possibly even next year. But in any event, this has come in recently, and this is the result of the property that you know is the Hilltop Farm Market on Empire Boulevard that in 1981 was zoned to R-1-12. And obviously, during that time, nobody's shown any interest in developing single-family housing on R-1-12 on Empire Boulevard. So he came to the Comprehensive Plan Update Committee a year and a half ago and asked for a rezoning to LaSalle's Landing. And of course, then COVID kicked in, and we got back into the groove here just a couple of months ago. On July 13th, the committee went out to that site along with a few others to look at it both from Empire Boulevard and to also look at it from the property owner's perspective that are already living to the east of that site. And luckily, they were out that night doing various chores and things on their property, so the committee had a chance to speak to each and every one of them who abut this property. And the response was, we all recognize that something was going to happen with this property at some point in the future, but we understand what LaSalle's Landing, which is what the applicant was requesting, allows for a lot of intense development, and certainly they've seen that on Empire Boulevard and are somewhat concerned because their grades are not that much different from a lot of the property on which this area sits. So after consideration, the committee determined that it was not an appropriate zoning use for that property. LaSalle's Landing is too intense for that site, but they felt that the properties up here on the other side of the street are all zoned limited business, and that provides for some type of commercial activity, but certainly has some restrictions with respect to height and intensity of use. Therefore, they are making a recommendation to you that if you see fit to, they would recommend that you look at the LB or limited business zoning district as an option here. The applicant realizes that and has since made an application requesting limited business from R112. So my thought is if you are amenable to it, we could set a public hearing to see where that goes, especially as it relates to the neighbors. He does have the former Hillhaven Nursing Home to the north. There is a small property here. The applicant's property is 2.9 acres. It's not a big property, but this property is also one that the committee looked at because that is actually a single-family home at this point in time, and it's been that way forever. The committee is also recommending that if you do this one, we may want to look at doing this one as well, although the owner has not requested any rezoning of this property to date, and we really haven't even had a chance to talk to the owner about it. So certainly we will do that as time goes on, but the application in question is this 2.9 acre parcel.
Okay. All right, board comments from Mr. Costello.
Well, you know, I don't like it any more than I like the rail car wash proposal because it looks like it's a spot zoning right now, as it would, you know, because you said the residential, and then limited business.
Well, it really
in the
isn't,
middle.
though, because it does have that zoning district immediately
Across the
abutting
street.
across the street, so it's
Well,
not like...
that's a positive.
Yeah.
So I would certainly support going to a public hearing, so, and have a,
And
hear
I
what
guess
the
that is the
neighbors say.
request.
and-
It's not, obviously not requesting the rezoning, but it's a request for a public hearing.
Yeah.
Jim, has the applicant or the owner proposed any type of berm or any kind of a buffer between what could be rezoned
Not at this
compared
point.
to the
One of the
backyards of the residents?
One of the concerns was, as I told you earlier, he had an intent to maybe do an apartment building here, which could have been multi-storied, which obviously would have been very visible from the
Right.
property to the east. There is a good stand of trees there, and one of the reasons why I think that we would look at less intensive use like LB would be to try, as a condition of approval, to try and preserve that tree line along the back property. His intent initially was to take a portion of that down for parking area, which he would not need for an LB zone. So I think that we would have to discuss buffering requirements, additional landscaping as part of any activity that goes on the site, and he understands that because we and the committee did talk about that with him.
Yeah.
Okay. Board, other questions, comments?
I agree. I think the hearing is appropriate.
I think the opportunity, done properly, I think you had indicated, that tree line there, that protects the neighbors on that residential side. It provides a buffer. The limited business gives the opportunity for some additional business along that area. Definitely, we would want to speak with the property just to the, kind of the southwest, to see if there's some interest there overall. And with the opportunity that, as we take a look at this, we balance, tax base, we balance protecting our residents and buffering them accordingly. And this seems to be an opportunity that would definitely warrant a public hearing and get input from everybody around and to see what that might look like moving forward. So. All right, if no additional questions for Mr. Costello, would entertain a motion, and this would be to advance this to a public hearing so that the neighbors, applicant, owner, applicant, and neighbors had the opportunity to give feedback back to the board.
I'll move it.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilperson Morse, second by Councilperson Cole. Seeing no further discussion at this point, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, we'll move on to item D, and this is a tree removal at Pewter Rock. And Mr. Tate, Mr. Tree himself.
Thank you. So this request, while it's listed purely as, or simply as just Pewter Rock, it did originally come in from the resident and the homeowner at number 15 Pewter Rock, with request to have dead and dying ash trees behind the property. These properties on Pewter Rock do abut one of the stormwater management ponds, so there is a strip of town-owned land surrounding that pond where all of these trees are currently growing. While we showed up and were out there, the neighbors on either side also came out with concerns and requests to take a look at the trees behind their property as well. So I have slips from both the neighbors at 11, 15, and 17, with concerns and requests to take down the trees kind of back on the town property along their backyards. A number of these property owners have taken down most of, if not all of the dead and dying ash trees on their property. I know one of the property owners was even trying to, or had hired an arborist to come in and try to treat these trees. Those efforts have since been successful or unsuccessful. They've even tried treating a few of the ones that are just over the property line on the town property with the goal of trying to preserve and save those. However, they recognize that has not been working and just wants them gone because it's been a waste of money so far. So I do have slips, at least from 15 and 17, that are signed right now, acknowledging that if the board agreed, we would have to hire out these trees. They are too large given what's in the backyard and the proximity to the houses and sheds and swing set, as you see in one of the pictures. We would have these hired out, remove the trees, take them down, remove all of the debris. There's nowhere to kind of tuck it in as a natural habitat for wildlife back there, but no replacement trees would be planted and the stumps would remain. The only reason I don't have the one from number 11 is that I believe they've been away or on vacation. We did talk to them that day, but didn't have, only brought one slip out thinking we were talking to the resident in number 15. We have since talked to them, explained what the process would be, and have that. And I know my deputy director, Joe Perkins, is trying to coordinate with them to figure out a time to sign that. Certainly wouldn't do any work before they have that signed. And, just as other applicants tonight have said, not only are there delays with materials, but also with contractors themselves. So that's something that we need to try to get, scheduled, and likely wouldn't be happening tomorrow anyway, so.
Okay. All right. Board, questions, comments? Do you tick all the boxes?
I think so. I think you got this.
Mr.
You got this down.
Eric's putting us in a position where we just can't ask any questions.
I think that was his goal, to be able to provide all the answers to the questions that we were anticipating asking, so.
Eric, just real quick, when you hire out and the company comes on and probably has to maneuver equipment on, let's say 15 Pewter Rocks property, when they leave, do they grade out any disturbance and put seed down on that? Or is that a part of this experience?
Typically, if there is any damage or disturbance to the lawn area, the contractor or the tree company will, try to rake up, and if there's any clumps of, sod or whatnot, they'll try to rake those out as good as they can. If anything additional is needed, we'll tend to do that, as we can do it cheaper.
Got it.
But a lot of the tree companies, they have smaller, they're smaller loaders, they've got turf tires on them, and they also have, plastic, they look like 4x8 sheets of plywood, but they're plastic track mats that they can put down, drive over those. They help disperse the weight so that it's not really causing a lot of damage. They're certainly not going to drive a bucket truck into these backyards. They're likely going to climb the trees as much as possible.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right. Other questions? Board, a motion to move forward?
So moved, Mr. Supervisor.
I'll second that.
Moved by Councilperson Ocken, seconded by Councilperson Draw. Seeing no questions on the table, I would ask for a roll call vote, please, Sue.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, Board, there being no further business to come before the Town Board tonight at the August 25th, 2021 work session, the meeting will stand adjourned at 7:50 p.m. Thank you to everyone that participated. Thank you to Penfield TV. Everyone, please be well and be safe. Thanks. Have a great evening.